I want to talk about trad wives. Here we have a trad... I thought I hit the button that made the scene change. Here we have a trad wife. You can tell because she's in some kind of flowy, lacy witch robe and also has like an hour worth of makeup on. No, not this. You've seen this? You've seen this before? She looks very happy. Oh yeah, you can tell. Yeah. She's Mormon, so I don't know. Varying levels of Mormon crazy, but it's always present, you know? Let's play the video.
This morning, my toddler stumbled into my room, and her first words were PB&J, so that's exactly what I got started on. Growing up, I loved having fresh bread. It was one of my favorite things, so I get it. Started by making a really simple sandwich bread with some yeast.
Imagine asking your mom for a PB&J in the morning, and she's like, okay, and she gets out the yeast. She's like, all right, it should be ready in like 3 hours.
Water, salt, sugar, and flour. Kneaded that until a dough formed, and then let that dough rise for about 2 hours until it doubled in size. I started on my raspberry jam. I used some lemon monk fruit sweetener, but you can also use sugar and some cornstarch to thicken it.
Because this is pornography? We're currently looking at pornography, yes, this is true. Is this that trad wife softcore porn shit? To an extent, but it's a different kind of pornography. It's not explicitly sexual. This is basically the female counterpart to the Andrew Tate thing, where they present this like masculine role model austerity, where Andrew Tate never really looks happy, but he's like grimly carrying out his biological obligation of being, I don't know, muscular and bald. And that's kind of what she's doing. This isn't just for male consumption. This is largely for women's consumption. I mean, the tweet itself that we're looking at is, she's kind of living my dream, not going to hold you. And it's gotten a lot of blowback, largely, well, for a variety of reasons. There's been more and more of an upswing in this. Okay, how do I put this? I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. You know how a lot of young men are kind of attracted to Andrew Tate's ideology and the messaging because they feel really insecure and listless and hopeless, and they don't have a very strong understanding of who they are? And they're often depressive and kind of weak-willed. So they see this like projected confidence, this like image of a man and what a man might be, and they kind of get like lulled into it. And even though Andrew Tate admits to not being a very happy or like self-driven person or whatever, like that doesn't matter to them because it's something, it's an image, you know? And it's an image that speaks to some very basic, almost carnal desires they have. The idea that being strong is good or being domineering is good or whatever. It appeases a kind of underlying emotional insecurity. This is that, but for women. It's the same kind of thing, you know? And though there are a lot of guys who will look at this and go like, yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to have a wife who wears a witch's outfit robe to spend 3 hours making a PB&J. There are a lot of women who look at this and see like an idealized version of what they want. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with guys being beefy, heaven forbid. And I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with women being kind of domestic, you know? If I had a girlfriend, the girlfriend made me a sandwich, you know, pardon me for not being very woke in this moment, you know, but I just want you to know, I think that's kind of nice, actually. I think I'd be happy. You're my girlfriend, you make me a sandwich, I'm not going to scream and flip the plate up and get the sandwich meat everywhere. I might actually like it a little bit. I think it'd be kind of nice to have someone make me a sandwich, you know? As is so often the case, the issue with, what do they call it? What's the term all those homosexuals use? Toxic masculinity. It's not that the idea that being strong or even gruff or domineering or whatever is necessarily bad. There's a bunch of like roles and expectations packaged with it that make men act like, I don't know, psychotic freaks. And likewise, nothing wrong with a chick who wants to make you a goddamn sandwich, you know? It's just that, much in the same way that Tate sells a very cynical, corporatized, insincere version of masculinity, this is that, but for femininity, you know? I think stuff like this is getting more popular because it's the logical counterpart to the movement that's happening with men, right? Like, if there are men who feel lost and listless and they don't know what they want to do with their lives and they're kind of like driven to return to some typical understanding of masculine behavior, wouldn't this be the same for women? Vosh, is this even propaganda? This just seems like a mom making a sandwich, TBH. You're blind. You haven't yet put on the They Live sunglasses. I don't know whether or not she's deliberately doing anything. I'm talking about this as a component of a broader trend, a component of a broader series of interests, motivations, biases, and what have you, that could influence the popularity of stuff like this. You've seen a lot more of this lately, haven't you? Come on, haven't you seen more TikToks, Twitter videos, whatever, that have been women throwing their arms up in the air and going, you know what, maybe I do want to be a housewife, actually. As though responding to some kind of you know, like insistent movement saying they can't. I mean, the one that's saying they can't, I guess, is the fact that we have a two-income household system now. How much of this is a response to capitalism, though, in some ways? Like, obviously, a lot of it is people idealizing the concept of not having to work. What a lot of women don't seem to understand or remember is that not working doesn't just mean they get to, like, chill at home all day. It doesn't even mean they have to do, like, housework. It also means utter economic dependence on men. That's what the second wave of feminist thought was all about, predominantly. The sexual revolution, the ability to have your own credit card and bank account. It wasn't like women were going, yeah, let's go and work. First of all, poor women have been working forever. The idea of like, oh yeah, it used to be all women would be housewives. No, that was upper middle class white women. That was not the majority of women at all, you know? You think poor families, like people who could barely afford to get their food, were like, oh no, the women won't work. What are you talking? Of course they would. What are you talking about? Working laundromats or whatever else. They worked in factories in World War II. They worked, you know? Of course they did. Yeah, the wealthier families could afford to live off of one income, and there was a particular boom in the post-World War II period, suburbanization, where that was a bit more prominent, but that was like a tiny, like, think about it, okay? The boom of, like, American suburban development happened in the 50s. The second wave feminist movement was in the 60s. The great era of women not working was literally, and only for a portion of the population, a single decade or so. Like, I'm simplifying a bit here, of course. We're talking about a lot of history and a lot of thoughts, but, like, Jesus, you know? But people act like, oh, yeah, historically, women never worked. Bullshit. Yes, they did. They worked harder than anyone works today, outside of, like, I don't know, cobalt slave mines. So, with that being said, it's more to do with women's economic independence than it is to do with, like, women being able to be a housewife. Ideally, everyone should work less and everyone should get to spend more time at home with their family. Like, that should be, that is the pro-family position. The fact that conservatives pretend to be pro-family while also being in favor of, like, the dad never gets to see the kids because they're always working, and also your child has to work 30 hours a week while being in high school, you know, that bullshit. Totally incoherent. I do sympathize with women wanting to return with a V to making, like, sandwiches for their husband and kids or whatever. That's fine, you know? There are kids who want moms to make them sandwiches. There are husbands who want wives to make them their sandwiches. Clearly, there's a great karmic cycle here that would be fed by someone making the sandwiches. That's fine. That's great, you know? But this idealization does speak to a very specific kind of, you know, like, ahistorical return with a V bullshit that is ultimately detrimental to everyone.
You can also use sugar and some cornstarch to thicken it. While that was going, I started on my peanut butter. I roasted all my peanuts in the oven and then ground them up with some sea salt until a paste formed.
This is how I make my peanut butter, by the way.
You can definitely add honey to this if you want to. I didn't today because the jelly would be quite sweet. So by this time, my bread was doubled in size, so I punched it to release all the air and then split it in two, rolled that out, and then folded that over to fit in my little...
This is deeply uncomfortable. I mean, I personally think it's vile, partly because I know about Mormons. Also because she's done up in so much makeup, because this is obviously in part like fetish roleplay. Like, the guys the women watching this are supposed to go, man, I wish I could be beautiful and helpless. And the guys watching this are supposed to go, man, it sure would be nice having a doll of a wife that I could and, like, have make food for me, you know? I also hate the whispery voiceover. I hate that too. I don't remember who it was or what it was for. Do you guys remember that, like, day in the life TikTok where the woman sounded like she was on 15 pounds of benzos? Like, they were just some dumb, like, San Francisco tech grifty types, but the lady was being, like, dragged around by the boyfriend, and she sounded like she was so strung out she was barely alive. Okay, a lot of you remember it. I don't think I'd be able to find it again, but at this point, they're doing the voice on purpose. I think that it is part of the aesthetic, the idea of subservience, you know?
Loaf pans. I let that rest for another 30 minutes to about an hour until it looked like a decent size in my loaf pan, and then I popped that in the oven and it came out so perfectly brown, soft in the middle. I was so excited. I couldn't wait, so I definitely...
Didn't we just see no, it was a different one. That was a different like TikTok sale thing, whatever. The like vertical rib shirt. This one's a lot nicer than the other one though. That other lady was selling some like drop shipped garbage. This is a nicer outfit. She's also pregnant. Yeah, that's why she's wearing looser clothing, right? I mean, I assume so.
Definitely sliced it a little too early. My daughter...
I don't... There's just such an incongruence between the trad wife pregnant, like loose flowy dress thing, and she's like blue stealing me. What the fuck? She's mewing. Well, stop. Your jaw's fine. What? Good Lord.
My daughter requested a mini PB&J.
Cutting all the crust off is insane. If I ever have a kid and they're like complain about the crust, like you're not going to shit. You can't shit until you eat the crust. You baby. You perhaps literal baby. You're not allowed to shit. I am padlocking the toilet. You will eat the crust. It's like people who don't eat the crust of pizzas, you know?
So I cut the bread down and spread it with my
that jam does look good though.
Cut it diagonally, and this was really good. She ended up having a few of them and wanted more.
Great. You understand what I'm talking about, right? With the return with a V shit for like trad wives. We talk about that a lot in the context of like Andrew Tate and masculine role models. I think that there is something to be said here, like with the like masculine archetype being like almost innately violent. That's always what they appeal to, right? The idea of like domination or domineering. Whereas with women, it's like, you can make cute sandwiches. There's definitely a difference in the perceived social harm. I just think, look, I think a lot of women want to be subservient. In large part, I think due to like social norms and biases. I mean, there's a lot of guys who want the opposite, right? So it makes sense. I don't think there's anything innately wrong. I also don't think that your life and your preferences are a like social I don't think they're meant to be like a performative social experiment where you have to like will yourself into being the perfect representative of your abstract ideology. It's like that old bullshit of like feminists being mad at themselves for being sexually submissive while still being feminist. It's really stupid, you know? If you're a lefty or whatever I don't know, you know, you're more into like making the sandwiches, that's fine. I don't think that's something that should be fought against. I certainly don't see a lot of that, by the way. People always strawman feminists as doing this like women can never be housewives thing. I have almost never seen this. Actually, the group that I see that the most often from is the like TERF crowd that conservatives get along with, because TERFs tend to be so performatively misandristic, or sorry, misandrist? Yeah, misandrist. So performatively misandrist that they will like reject like heterosexual domesticity as a concept. Not just for themselves, but as like a broader political force. It's like political lesbianism. But conservatives like TERFs, you know, because it goes along with the, you know, the transphobia bit that they're hinging so much on. You can get railed and still be a feminist? True. Is there a difference in aesthetics between Western and Eastern trads? It's pretty broad, just those two categories. There's like millions of cultures or whatever. Yes, there's differences everywhere. There's shared archetypes, though. I mean, it tends to like consistently reaffirm itself in certain ways. A lot of older neoliberal rad femmes have that attitude. Real modern feminist woman has a high-powered career and pays poor women to do all the domestic stuff. I think that's a stereotype. First of all, very few people can afford servants these days, and I don't think feminists are disproportionately like, you know, like wealthy wasps or whatever. It's like a vestigial element of the second feminist wave that conservatives end up adopting because they're fine with misandry as long as it hurts trans people.